I am going to be shooting 2 videos to cover all the vocabulary. 1 helps me upload them a lot easier, and 2, I figure if you don't have the best internet, you can watch them easier if they're a little bit shorter. And also, I want you to break this vocab up. I created a slide where it breaks it up because I want you to understand the first few terms before you even tackle the rest of the vocabulary. And there will be a Google Hangout later this week. I've already emailed that invite. So we're starting genetics this week. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. So I even went to school and got some props to try to help you see it rather than me just talking about it. So just make sure that you're not just filling in the chart, but that you're going along with these slides. So let's get started. So the reason that we have genetics is because of DNA. We've already studied this in class. This is our genetic material made of A's and T's and C's and G's. So our DNA is found in the nucleus. Remember our nucleus, right? This is where all of genetics takes place. It's right here. Our body reads this DNA. It reads this DNA. It's the recipe that makes us. I've been making a lot of new recipes, right? Because I've had time to try new things. This week I'm even going to try to make homemade cinnamon rolls and have them actually turn out. I'm not good at cinnamon rolls. Don't know why. It drives me crazy. But we're going to be talking about DNA, but we're not going to call it DNA. We're going to be talking about chromosomes and genes. They're just made of DNA. So first of all, we're going to talk about genes. So genes is the shortest piece of DNA that gets read, right? A gene. Genes are carried on our chromosomes. Chromosomes are just DNA. So you'll probably remember seeing these out and about in class. So this is a pair of chromosomes, and on it we have blue genes. So blue genes, right? So we have 3 pairs of genes in this chromosome. Chromosomes actually carry a lot more than just 3, but for the sake of keeping it simple, right, we always just show those. So just keep it really simple. A gene codes for a specific trait. So probably notice my hair is different. People always ask, where does Emma get her curly hair? She gets it from her gene that she inherited from me. I actually have curly hair and I haven't been able to get it cut, so it's getting so long that I can't style it the way I like, so I've just been letting it be curly. So a gene is a tiny piece of DNA. This gets read. This little thing right here, this gets read, and that's what codes for your traits. We'll talk about traits in a minute. And remember, a chromosome is just a big chunk of DNA. So both of these are just DNA. But chromosomes come in pairs. And if you think back to mitosis, we talked about how chromosomes ended up in the proper number of cells so that all of our body cells have the right recipe to do what they need to do. So chromosomes, right, are just condensed DNA, and on our chromosomes we have genes. And by the way, if the term chromatin ever comes up, it's just the unorganized DNA that we talked about earlier, right, before it condenses into these. All right, so you actually have 23 pairs of chromosomes. You have a total of 46 of these in every one of your cells, except if you're a female, you only have 23 in eggs, and if you're male, there's only 23 in your sperm. But your body cells all have 46 chromosomes. 23 of them came from your mom, and 23 of them came from your dad. So this is a human karyotype. This is a picture of what our chromosomes actually look like. Not all chromosomes are the same length. So the first chromosome pair is the longest of all of them. So they're much longer, more genes there. Chromosome 16, right, these are your pair, one from mom, one from dad. They're teeny tiny. Doesn't mean they're not important, because there's some super important stuff on short chromosomes. And then the last 2 are our sex pair. So if you're an XX, you're female, and XY means that you are male. You inherited an X from your mom and a Y from your dad. So traits. These genes that we're talking about, these little chunks of DNA, code for your trait. Right? A trait is a physical thing. It's a physical characteristic of us. one of the traits, right, of this picture is a brown eye. It's a light brown eye, but it's a brown eye. Dark hair. Right? Those are your traits. Curly hair. I have webbed toes. Right? That's a trait. Are you tall? Are you short? Is your hair brown? Is your hair black? Is your hair blonde? Is it red? Is it a mix? Will your hair turn gray early or will you go gray late? These are all traits. Your blood type is a trait. Can you curl your tongue? Traits. Next week you're going to get to do 2 fun activities instead of boring vocab to practice learning about these traits. So, eye color, hair texture, thick hair, thin hair, curly. I already said curly hair. Never mind. So, your traits, right? Physical characteristics. So, the next few terms are going to be kind of new, and I'm going to clarify a few things as we work through them. So, this old term is starting to come back up, allele. Just think of it like a gene. But allele means that there are different forms of genes. There's only 2 though, so it's not bad. There's dominant genes and there's recessive. Those are the two alleles that we'll have. I rarely use the term allele because we didn't learn it when I was in college. They taught genes. So dominant gene and recessive gene. Allele rarely comes up. I like to cover it though, so if it does pop up, you're not confused. So it just means that there's more than one form of the gene. So you can have dominant or you can have recessive, which we're going to define now. If we were in class, I'd probably ask the question, what do you think this means? And everybody, when I say dominant, or they're stronger. But in the case of genetics, it's not true. And we're going to cover that coming up. So the dominant gene, right, is the allele or the gene whose trait will always show up in an organism if one dominant gene is present. So here I have a pair of genes. These are both dominant. That means this person could only express the dominant trait. Here I have another pair of genes. This pair is both recessive. This person could only express the recessive trait. This is a pair of genes where this person inherited a recessive from one parent and a dominant from another. The dominant gene will hide the recessive gene and they will express this trait. So, let's say, for instance, in plants, red flowers are dominant to white flowers. It's not true for every type of plant, but this is just a sort of made-up scenario for right now. So, this plant would be red. Even though it has a white gene, it gets hidden. That's all it means to be dominant. It can hide a recessive trait. So, recessive, right, is an allele that can be masked. So, in order to express it, you have to have both genes in the gene pair be recessive. Both. All right. So, just remember, dominant does not mean strong. Right? It only means it can hide a recessive gene if you have a gene pair where one is dominant and one is recessive, like we just saw with my old genes. So this is fun, and we would have started this entire unit with this really cool project about our eyes, and I'm still going to assign part of it next week for you to do at home, just so you can learn about your eye color, because eye color is amazing. Even though this diagram shows that, right, the mom has green eyes and the dad has brown, they can have kids with all eye colors. 2 brown-eyed people can have all blue-eyed babies. 2 blue-eyed people can have brown-eyed babies. Because when it comes to eye color, it's controlled by more than one set of genes. And that's why I'm going to have you look at your eyes, because eye color is so unique. There are very few human traits that are only, sorry, dropped one of my chromosomes. There are very few human traits that are only controlled by one pair of genes. So on eye color, it's 2 on one chromosome, one set of chromosomes, and then it's 1 on another. And so it's crazy the combination of eye color that you can get. And what I'll have you do is look into your iris, the colored portion of your eye, because you're going to discover that you carry a lot of colors in there. So this just kind of explains this and explains what I just talked about. So let's talk about 2 terms, homozygous and heterozygous. Homozygous means that the pair of allele is exactly the same. So you can have 2 big B's, which in genetics, dominant and recessive are represented by big or little. Dominant genes, we use big letters. Recessive genes, we use little letters. But if something is homozygous, it means that in its gene pair, both of them are the same. They're either homozygous dominant, where they're both dominant, or homozygous recessive. So that means both genes in this gene pair are the same allele or same type. Homozygous dominant or homozygous recessive. But like we saw earlier, you can have gene pairs where one is dominant and one is recessive, and that's called heterozygous. Right? So heterozygous. That means in the gene pair they're different. One is recessive and one is dominant. So for today, I want you to understand those. Email me questions. There's going to be a document. It's called the question document. You guys aren't used to it yet, so we haven't done anything new. So it's going to be the question document, and you will type your name, and then you will type your question, and I'll answer it. And everybody can type on it and see everybody's questions. So make sure you read this. Make sure you understand those before you go on to the next set of vocab.